وسائل مفتي.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. We're talking about the childhood of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born an orphan, and then just when he was 6 years old, his beloved mother passed away as well. Our beloved Prophet ﷺ had a lot of hardship at the very beginning of his life. But that doesn't mean that our beloved Prophet ﷺ did not rise to the challenges and did not meet the challenges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him through. We talked about the travel of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam traveled a lot, even as a child. And one of his first journeys out of country or out of his region was a journey towards Syria. When our beloved Prophet ﷺ traveled with his uncle Abu Talib, who became the caretaker when his grandfather also passed away at the age of 8. So the Prophet ﷺ was 12 years old, and he traveled with his uncle on this business trip. Makkah is a place where there is no fertile land. So you cannot do any farming. You cannot grow any plants there, any trees there. There are no mango trees in Makkah. There are no palm trees in Makkah. There are no coconut trees in Makkah. There is nothing that grows in the native land of Makkah. Now you begin to see some greenery. If you go to Makkah, now you see some trees, you see some grass, and you see some greenery as well. And it doesn't look anything like Makkah used to be originally. And the reason why you see some plantations now, some greenery now, is not because the land of Makkah has changed. It is because they brought the soil from outside, fertile soil, and they put the fertile soil on top of the original soil of Makkah, and they started growing grass on it, they started growing palm trees on it, they started growing other plants on it. So that's why, and that's how you see it there. And it's not easy to grow anything there, even with this new soil that they put on. They have to water it on a daily basis throughout the year, because the seasons don't really change in Makkah. It remains almost same throughout the year, except in summer it gets very, very hot. In winter it gets just hot. So the winters are just hot, and the summers are very hot, and there's nothing in between. So the main source of income for the people of Makkah had always been business. And what they used to do for business, they used to go to two places primarily, to Syria in summer and to Yemen in winter. Syria and Yemen were the two major markets within reach and within access to Makkah. So in winter, they used to go down south because it was warmer in Yemen, and they used to buy goods from there, bring those goods back to Mecca, and then sell whatever merchandise they would bring and make profit from it. And a lot of their business was done in the Hajj year, in the Hajj time. Hajj season was the main time of their profit. Because during the Hajj, people would come from all over Arabia, and we're talking about before Islam. Even now, when Hajj comes, we have million people, 2 million people, sometimes we have 4 to 5 million people coming from all over the world to Mecca. And then they stay in Mecca for at least a few days to a few weeks. So all the people who come to Mecca, they have to buy stuff in Mecca. They have to buy food in Mecca. They have to pay for accommodation in Mecca. So all of that was the way Meccans used to make money. So in summer, they used to travel to Yemen and buy goods from there, bring it back and make money here. And then in winter, they used to go down south, and in summer, they used to go up north to Syria. And they used to buy merchandise from there with the money. And most of the times, the caravans that would go on these trade trips, they would take money from different families in Mecca. Our beloved Prophet ﷺ's wife, Khadija radiallahu anha, was one of the most successful women. And she was the wealthiest woman in Mecca. According to some reports, she used to invest so much money in each business trip that would either equal or exceed the entire amount of investment for the rest of the people of Mecca. So let's say if all the families in Mecca invested $100,000, Khadija radiallahu anha would also invest 100,000 of her own or more. And of course, the more you invest, the more money you make. So she would in return make more money as well. But this is how the business trips would work. So the Prophet ﷺ joined his uncle Abu Talib when he was only 12 years old on this journey to Syria. On the way to Syria, they arrived at this place called Busra. It's on the border of the old Syria, which was called Levant or Bilad al-Sham. So on this border town called Busra, and it's an ancient town, the people in this caravan decided to take rest in a monastery. And the monk in that monastery, his name was called Bahira. So when they reached into that monastery and they decided to take rest there, the monk, whose name was Bahira, he approached Abu Talib. And he said, "Who is this child, this young boy?" Abu Talib said, "He's my nephew. He's my nephew, Muhammad. His name is Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So Abu Talib said, so the monk said to Abu Talib that, "I'm telling you that this boy is Sayyidul Mursaleen. He is the master and leader of all the prophets." Abu Talib was shocked and surprised to hear that from a monk. Not from a Muslim, from a monk. And monks were all Christians. Because it was Christianity, in Christianity that these people, they invented this way of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which they call monasticism or rahbaniyya. So Abu Talib asked the monk, he said, "How can you say that? What evidence do you have to say that my nephew is going to become the master of the prophets?" So the monk said, "When you guys were coming down from that hill, I saw all the trees and rocks were bowing to this boy. And they were literally prostrating to this boy. And that can only happen to the Prophet. The rocks and trees, we are told in our books, they are going to prostrate and bow to the last Prophet of Allah, who is going to be the leader and master of all the prophets. So this is how I know it. And then Bahira, he gave an advice to Abu Talib. He said, I recommend that you do not proceed on this trip with this boy. You take him back to Makkah immediately, because his life could be at risk in Syria. There are people who know about the signs that they will see in him, and they might try to harm him. They might try to kill him as well. So for his protection, for his safety, and for your safety, I urge you to take him back to Makkah. Abu Talib immediately became concerned, and he immediately took the Prophet ﷺ back to Makkah. This was a time when the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, known as Kaaba, was in need of immediate repairs or immediate renovation. This was a time when Kaaba did not even have a roof, because the last construction after Ibrahim a.s. perhaps the Makkans did, they did not have enough money to put a roof on the Kaaba. Subhanallah. So the Kaaba did not have a roof, and even the walls of the Kaaba were only about 6 to 7 feet high. Right now, they are about 10 to 20 feet high. About 15 to 20 feet high. But at that time, the walls of the Kaaba were only about 6 to 7 feet high. So you could literally climb up and see what's inside the Kaaba. Plus, there was no roof. So the people of Makkah decided to pool their money together and renovate the Kaaba. But in order to renovate the Kaaba, they had to literally demolish everything. So they put their money together. They collected donations from all the families in Makkah, because they were not going to put any dollar or any money into the construction of the house of Allah that was impure. So they looked for the most pure money, and they did not have enough. But whatever they collected, they decided to start the work of demolition and construction of the Kaaba. This is one of the few historical reconstructions of the Kaaba. During that time, fortunately, on the seaport of Jeddah, there was a ship that crashed. And that ship was made out of wood, and very strong wood. This was a Roman ship, by the way. And these ships used to sail at that time too. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Quran. أَوْ يُوبِقْهُنَّ بِمَا كَسَبُوا وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these as signs. You know how massive these ships are? Especially the cargo ships. Even today, in modern times, majority of the trade in the world takes place through the sea routes, by shipping routes. You remember what happened a few years ago when one of the massive ships got stuck in the Suez Canal? And that caused a blockage of almost all the ships that were going to Europe, and then from Europe coming to America. And same thing happens with the Panama Canal. All the ships that are coming from Japan and China and those places, they're coming through that Suez Canal and coming to America. If Suez Canal gets blocked, then that business becomes blocked as well. So this ship crashed on the shore of Jeddah, and all the wood that was in there, which was very high quality, it was being sold. So one of the leaders of Makkah, he went to Jeddah and he decided to buy some of the wood from there to use in the construction of the Kaaba. So they brought some of the wood from there, and there was also a very good architect in there, coming from Rome. So they brought that architect with them as well, and they started doing the construction of the Kaaba. All the families in Makkah, they were involved, including the family of the Prophet ﷺ, Quraysh, and all the other tribes and clans within Makkah. They were all participating in the construction of the Kaaba because this is an honor. When you're building the house of Allah, it is the greatest honor of your life. When you're building the masjid, it is the greatest honor of your life. So if you are given an opportunity to do that, take advantage of that opportunity. So these people, they knew that this is an honor that Allah has given to them to construct the Kaaba. So they were all doing the construction of the Kaaba. And when the time came to put the black stone, Al-Hajar al-Aswad, into the corner of the Kaaba, they all started having this argument. Each family or each clan wanted to be the one to have the honor to install the black stone into the wall of the Kaaba, the corner. And this argument became so intense that they were about to fight with each other. All of a sudden, one of the wise people in those families, he said, why don't we accept one proposal? That whoever walks into the masjid tomorrow morning, first we will accept him as our leader, and we will accept whatever he decides. His decision will become binding upon all of us. So the next day, when that time came, the first person to walk into the masjid was our beloved Prophet ﷺ. And he was only about 14 years old at that time. He wasn't very old. He was very young, a teenager. He was the first person to walk into the masjid, so they all accepted him as their decision maker. So the Prophet ﷺ could have made the decision for himself and could have decided that I will put the black stone into the corner of the Kaaba. Instead, he wanted to keep everybody together, and he wanted to keep everyone happy, and he wanted everyone to take that honor. So he decided, through his wisdom that Allah had given him, he said, we are going to put the black stone, Al-Hajar al-Aswad, on a sheet, on a fabric sheet. And then each leader from each community, from each tribe, will hold one corner of that shawl, that sheet. And then we will bring it to the Kaaba, and then I will install it in the corner of the Kaaba with my own hands. And they all had already agreed that whatever he decides, they will accept it. So they all accepted the decision of the Prophet ﷺ. So first, they put the black stone on a sheet. Then they all carried the sheet all the way to the Kaaba. And then the Prophet ﷺ picked it up and installed it into the corner of the Kaaba. When they were completing the construction of the Kaaba, they ran short of funds. They didn't have enough money to cover the whole area of the Kaaba, so they made it shorter. They had to close it. So instead of covering the whole area of the Kaaba, they left a little bit part of the Kaaba outside of the construction, and they closed it. That part which was left out of the construction is still left out. Even today, when you go to the Kaaba, there is one part of the Kaaba which is called Hakim. That originally is part of the construction of the Kaaba. When Ibrahim a.s. built the Kaaba, it was inside of Kaaba. But it was left out when the Quraysh built the Kaaba and they didn't have enough money to cover the whole thing. so they made it shorter. And that's how it has always been. It's been now over 1400 years. It's been like that. And it will remain like that until the day of judgment. If anybody dares to change it, it will be changed back to this as it is now. Because that's how Allah has intended it to be. But the good thing is that since now the door of the Kaaba is not open for people like you and I, it's open only for very, very special people, very powerful people. So people like you and I also have a chance to pray inside the Kaaba if you get inside the Hatim. If you get to pray inside the Hatim, you're literally praying inside the Kaaba, but there's no walls around you. That's the only difference. Otherwise, that area is also the interior of the Kaaba. Last thing, during that time, Arabs used to fight with each other a lot, because this is called the days of Jahiliyyah. And there's a reason why this whole period is called the period of Jahiliyyah, the period of ignorance, because they used to fight over silly things. So there was one war that lasted for 4 years. It is called Harbul Fijar, or the sacrilegious war. That war lasted for 4 years, and it was primarily between two tribes, between Quraysh and Hawazin. Quraysh were the people of Makkah, and Hawazin were the people of Taif. So basically, this was a war between the two cities, Makkah and Taif. And these are the two most prominent and ancient cities in Arabia. So what happened? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this was the last year of this war. The war became intense again. And sometimes they used to fight in the days of sacred months, which is haram. Even now it's haram, and even before it was haram. But they violated the sanctity of the sacred months. So the war started at that time. The Prophet ﷺ was 15 years old, 14 or 15 years old. And Banu Hashim, the family of the Prophet ﷺ, they were also involved in it. Everybody had to be involved in it. So Banu Hashim were also involved in it, and they were fighting from the side of Makkans. So the person who was leading the family of the Prophet ﷺ was his uncle, Zubayr. Zubayr bin Abdul Muttalib, he was the leader of Quraysh, or he was the leader of Banu Hashim, the family of the Prophet ﷺ. And so the Prophet ﷺ, in support of his uncles, he was part of it. The person who was the commander-in-chief of Makkans at that time, his name was Harb bin Umayyah. Harb is the father of Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan is the father of Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu. So Harb bin Umayyah was the leader or the commander-in-chief of Makkans, and other side was Hawazin and their tribes. They were all together. When they had this fight, the Prophet ﷺ was participating in it, but the Prophet ﷺ did not fight. Some reports do suggest the Prophet ﷺ fought as well, but according to the authentic reports, the Prophet ﷺ participated, but he did not fight with anyone. He was just on the defense. Initially, the people of Hawazin, they defeated Makkans, and then they fought again. Then the people of Quraysh, they defeated the people of Hawazin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them victory. But then at the end, they had to come up with a truce. So they agreed to restore their relations, and they agreed to an agreement where they were not going to have any wars again. So at the end of this war, some elders from both sides, from the people of Makkah and also from the people of Hawazin, they came together in the home of Abdullah bin Jad'an in Makkah, and they decided to initiate an agreement, an alliance, which was called Hilful Fudul. And what was the primary objective of that alliance? That we, the people of Makkah, will not help anyone who's oppressing others, We will always kick that person out of Makkah, and we will not give any accommodation to an oppressor in Makkah, and anyone who's being oppressed, we will help him. This was the alliance that was created, and it's called Hilful Fudul. And the reason why it's called Hilful Fudul, because the three people who were the initiative takers in this initiative, their names were Fadl, Mufaddal, and Fudayl. Three people had similar names, so the alliance or the agreement was called Hilful Fudul. The Prophet ﷺ praised this. And he said, after becoming Prophet of Allah, he said, even today, if I was invited to be part of such an agreement and such an initiative, I would say yes. Because this is a good agreement. This is a good alliance to help the oppressed and not give any accommodation to the oppressed. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he, at the age of 25, he was proposed by al-Mu'mineen Khadija radiyallahu anha to marry him. Next we'll talk about the marriage of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Khadija radiyallahu anha. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Any questions? Yes. Christians are so Omer asked a question. What are Christians? Christians are the people who believe in Christianity. And Christianity is another religion. Like Islam is a religion, Christianity is another religion. Okay? If you say Christians are those who believe in Isa alayhi salam, we believe in Isa alayhi salam too. Correct? So Christians are the people who believe in Christianity. We do not believe in Christianity. We believe in Isa alayhi salam, but not in Christianity. By the way, Isa alayhi salam never preached Christianity either. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. اللهم صل وسلم على عبدك ورسولك. اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد أفضل صلواتك. اللهم إنا نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في الدين والدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ألف بين قلوبنا وأصلح ذات بيننا. اللهم انصر أهل فلسطين على عدوك وعدوهم يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم انصر المسلمين المظلومين. اللهم انصر المسلمين المستضعفين. اللهم انصر إخواننا في فلسطين. اللهم انصر إخواننا في لبنان. اللهم انصر إخواننا في غزة. اللهم انصر إخواننا في يمن. اللهم انصر إخواننا في إيران. اللهم انصر جميع المسلمين في جميع بلاد المسلمين. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.